Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Woo boy, long one today. Sorry for the delay. Had some stuff to get done yesterday, one of which you'll hear about below. But enough small talk, let's get to the meat. I misplaced an important story from Friday, so we're circling back around to it. Trump signed executive orders to pass a number of prescription drug price reforms that bear striking resemblance to those proposed in Democratic healthcare plans, including Yang's. The most impactful of the lot is likely the establishment of an international drug price index and mandate for the government to pay no more for drugs than other countries do. This is a part of Yang and Bernie's M4A plans to keep the U.S. from getting price gouged by profiteering. This could instigate major price shifts. Trump also dipped his toe into another Yang and Bernie policy, that of allowing the import of drugs from other countries, except that Trump is only opening imports with Canada, who has historically opposed exporting to the U.S. because they lack the supply. As such, that one is unlikely to have much effect. Trump also revived his drug rebate rule, stripping legal shields for reimbursements paid by drug makers to middlemen and insurance plans providing coverage through Medicare's Part D drug program, or Medicaid. I don't know enough about the industry to analyze this stuff myself, but this move was apparently not taken in the past because it would raise premiums. In the words of John Conradi, an outside spokesman for the Campaign for Sustainable Prescription Pricing, quote, a reboot of the rebate rule, after the administration's own admission it would increase premiums on Medicare beneficiaries and cost taxpayers hundreds of billions, would be a stunning cave to Big Pharma at the expense of American seniors and taxpayers. End quote. Another order mandated health centers pass on to patients any savings that they get from drug makers for insulin and epinephrine. I'm confused as to why it would only be mandated for those two drugs and not for all of them. I'm also wondering if they will simply jack up prices elsewhere to compensate. My biggest question is why Trump waited 4 years to issue these orders, especially the drug price index and imports, as well as why only Canada. It seems highly unlikely to me that it just happened to coincide with the upcoming election. If true, it is deplorable that he would continue to let Americans suffer price gouging on life-saving medicines just to use it as a ploy for his re-election, but I guess it's better than never doing it at all. Speaking of things I forgot, the Republicans' new proposed legislation also supports an extension of the federal eviction moratorium, which has already lapsed. Many states still have their own eviction protections in place, but they will also be expiring soon. And there's one very important thing to remember about these laws: they don't erase debt. They only postpone when you can be thrown out of your home, but the rent or mortgage payments continue to pile up during that time. Essentially, they do nothing but kick the problem down the road. It's estimated as many as 13 million Americans are facing eviction by September. CNBC put together a map showing the percentage of renters at risk per state, which averages around 40%. Delaying the inevitable is not a solution. The solution is getting people the money they need. A new trip to the Arctic reveals a continuing advancement of the rate of melting ice, reaching up to 6 times the rate of the 90s and causing up to 50 meters of coastline loss per year. That's horizontally, not vertically, obviously. The general estimate seems to be that the last Arctic ice will be gone within 30 years, meaning extreme flooding on the coasts and even far inland in places of low elevation. Which reminds me, if you need to explain climate change to someone, the YouTuber Up Is Not Jump made a fantastic, quick, layman's terms, funny explanation video that goes through the evidence, makes sense of it, and debunks the usual myths around it. Highly recommend bookmarking and sharing. Link is in the description as always. A recent opinion article from Bloomberg expressed an idea that is familiar to me but shocking to hear from that particular news outlet. The idea is that our declining economy's disenfranchisement of younger generations is leading them to reject capitalism and turn to other economic systems, particularly socialism. The article goes so far as to recommend the adoption of universal health care, simplification of the tax code, and replacement of the welfare state with a UBI. All very true. What it does not mention is the other side of the coin, the rejection of democracy due to the failing of our political system to live up to the promises of representation. This is leading us toward authoritarian forms of government alongside socialism or communism. We're heading in the direction of something like China, where the government is in complete control of the economy and civil liberties are a dwindling memory. This is why it is vital that we push through democracy and economic reforms that reorient government to serve the people rather than corporations. While we're on the topic of China's violation of civil liberties, John Oliver did an informative episode on the situation with China's Uyghur population, and it's almost certainly worse than you thought. They're being surveilled to the point of having a state camera above every exterior door in the city, rounded up by the thousands on sham charges of suspicious activity, and sent either into forced labor for corporations or to re-education centers, which are essentially prisons where they control every second of your life, force women to abort pregnancies, shock you in the back of the head for taking more than a couple minutes in the bathroom, force you to recite chants of loyalty to the government, and more. Worth noting that this overt persecution began following protests and rioting by the Uyghurs against their oppression by the state. The state used that as an excuse to crack down, labeling many as terrorists and holding the rest of the population under indefinite suspension of terrorist sympathies. Sound familiar? Progress is being made on a vaccine for COVID. Moderna, an innovative company working on producing vaccines by directly stimulating cells to produce the antibodies rather than using a part of the virus to trigger the immune system, just started the first phase 3 trial in humans on Monday. The trial will enroll 30,000 volunteers in a double-blind study. If you're unfamiliar, that means half will get the drug and half will get a placebo, and neither the patients nor the scientists will know who got what, so as to prevent bias. The trial will look to confirm safety and effectiveness at preventing infection. While this is good news, it's worth noting that the earliest predictions for a public vaccine are early next year, and that it will take months to produce and administer the vaccine to the majority of the population. In all likelihood, the virus will continue to be a significant threat for another year at the least. Diane Pageon wrote a lengthy article on her experience with the welfare system and her argument for why UBI would be better. It's far too long for me to get into, unfortunately, but the gist is that she was employed as a social worker, found the book Tyranny of Kindness, contacted the author Teresa, and worked with her to advocate for UBI. Definitely worth a read if you're looking for a detailed first-person account. Yang also wrote another op-ed yesterday. Nothing new on his part, but it did have some great quotes. My favorite was from a note written by Washington policy analyst at Cohen Research Group, Chris Kruger, in a note to clients in late May. Quote, "We are all now seemingly Yang Gang." End quote. Yang himself said something simple but extremely important. Quote, "The danger here is that we do too little, not too much." End quote. This is all too true and something Republican senators need to get through their heads. Trying to limit the stimulus is only going to draw out the economic recovery for years longer than necessary, ultimately costing us more in the end. Yang also said the question of UBI's cost should be whether we can afford not to do it, given the rate of transformation of the economy and the fact tens of millions of jobs are gone for good. Mayor Tubbs announced that a documentary called Stockton on My Mind will premiere tonight, Tuesday, at 9 p.m. on HBO. It will chronicle Tubbs' career, particularly his UBI efforts. Blair Walsingham just launched the first real episode of her new podcast, It's Your Vote. Check it out below and support this fantastic Humanity First candidate. Income Movement has announced they are looking for volunteers to help make a permanent federal UBI a reality. They have a list of tasks to sign up for so you can choose the role you'll be most comfortable and effective in. Income Movement has been the prime leader in organizing and deploying actions toward our goals. So please, if you have time, follow the link below and join the crew. Just as he did for Marilyn Strickland in Washington, Andrew will be participating in phone banking for Jen Perelman tomorrow, Wednesday, at 3 p.m. Pacific. Sign up at the link below to join them. Finally, longtime Yang Ganger, co-developer of the Trickle Up Content Hub, and host of the Mindful Skeptics podcast, The Magnificent Boyce Littlefield, was kind enough to invite me on his show yesterday for a casual chat about the world going down the toilet and us trying to clog the drain. Boyce has done a great deal to build the movement, regularly interviewing all sorts of interesting Yang Gang and others on his channel, and has a lot of great ideas for where to go from here that I'll be sharing with you as soon as they're ready. I recommend listening to his interview with Hong Kong Yang Ganger John Sullivan, who talks about how you can vote via ATM over there. My interview is a great watch if you want to destroy your idea of what I look like, or see what it's like when I talk off script with another human being, rather than reading a letter I wrote to myself every day, like a creep. What, now you're disrespecting me, future Alex? Am I a joke to you? You wouldn't have a clue what to say without me feeding you the lines. I'm not having an argument with you, Past Alex. For one, you're writing both sides of this. For another, you're dead. For all intents and purposes, I've replaced you like a pod person. Actually, that's kind of sad. I feel bad for Past Alex now. Me too. Of course, the best place to find that episode and all other Humanity First content is on thetrickleup.com. Help us build it into a hub for pragmatic progressives everywhere. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share the climate change video. Tell all the supposed capitalists and conservatives to support UBI and democracy reform if they don't want to live in a socialist dictatorship. Check out Blair's new podcast and the Mindful Skeptics podcast. Sign up for phone banking with Yang and Jin and for volunteering opportunities with Income Movement. Help recruit other organizations to the cause and get everyone to sign the UBI petitions. Flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters using the ResistBot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need financial help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread. And don't forget to Yang Daily.